Today we're on the set of Mathematics of the Heart at Theatre 503 to speak to director Donnacadh O'Briain about the show and his work in general. Thank you so much for joining us today. So I guess if we start at the beginning of your career itself, where did your interest in theatre first begin?
I think I had this notion when I was a kid that I was good at acting. It was a completely unfounded notion, so I had no reason to think it. When I was in school, then in my teens, there was a school show every year, and so I started being in school shows. And I mean, it came down to, I suppose, the fact that I was kind of up for it, for whatever reason, because it was fun, and also I suppose I liked the idea of being on stage, and I could do accents. I'd lived in England for a bit as a kid, so I was able to play. I could play the English characters, and I could do a good cowboy, and I could do a good New York, and I could do a good posh English. And
So when was it that you became interested in directing? When you were interested in acting?
Well, probably at a very similar time, because one of the person who I suppose inspired me in a way to think, oh my God, I could do this with my life. It was called Tony Fay, and he was a director, and so I suppose the thing I was doing with him was acting, and I loved it. But also, I kind of looked up to what he did himself. I found that magical. I found the controlling of the stage and the movement of the thing, and the use of incorporating lighting and sound, and I just found all that really fascinating. And so, I actually got a chance accidentally to direct for the first time when I was 16, my final year of school, because there was no teacher to direct a school show, and there was no. I mean, in Ireland, there's no drama in my school at any level. So I went to the principal and said, "Look, well, I'd love to do it. Can I do it?"
What show was it?
It was dreadful. It's a horrific show. It was a pantomime called Humpty Dumpty. Ooh. But it was fascinating, and I learned a lot. And I suppose I also had a kind of a responsibility as producer as well in some way, and which is a role I've taken intermittently ever since, including this show. I learned some good lessons. I learned some good lessons on it, and although artistically it was of absolutely no merit at all, it was a good experience. And I learned things, and then shortly after that, I started auditioning for drama schools, and then the following year, I went to drama school
as an actor.
As an actor, yeah, but with a notion that I liked directing, but again, I didn't really know too much about all that stuff. Anyway, I wasn't all abundantly clear to me what everything was anyway. So it was only in my second year as a training as an actor that I started taking directing seriously. And then very shortly after that, I started directing only.
Do you think being an actor helps directing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it defines me in some ways because it relates to how I approach working with actors. It relates to how I approach reading a play, how I think about how plays work on stage and between actors, between characters. Mm-hmm. I think it defines all of those things because I try and really see as clearly as I can exactly what they're doing and what that is doing on stage and with the other characters and what that's generating. I've learned how to know, or not how to know, but how to take a pretty good stab, a pretty good guess at what an actor needs at any given moment. I think that is a very key part of my job.
Yeah. Do you think more directors should perhaps sit in the actor's shoes, so to speak?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, basically, yes. I do think they should. But as I say, there are lots of very good directors who've never been actors. It all helps, and it all makes you who you are. But you could do it without it, certainly.
Are you ever tempted to kind of don the acting shoes again when you're looking at a piece as a director?
Kind of. I mean, I suppose every now and again I work on something where maybe there's something about me that is good casting for it, but that's pretty rare. But as a director, what I want the best people for that job, and I'm yet to find a project where I thought I was the best person for a part, or the best person to design it, or the best person to light it. I think I'll always want someone better than me in all of those other jobs. You have to seek out the best collaborators because they are what make your work. The director essentially disappears, and what's left is what all of your team have done for you and for the show. So much of your job is to steer them and to direct them and to empower them and help them and push them when they need pushing, encourage them when they need encouraging. All that stuff is such a key part of it. So much of directing is managing your team and being there for them.
Do you find it difficult to stop directing? Kind of when you're watching it, do you think, oh, I'd quite like to change that bit? Or once you're happy with it, do you just like to leave it?
Well, I mean, theoretically you stop at press night, and I think that's basically there's a lot to be said for that. I mean, to be honest, in this industry, in this country, if you keep working after press night, you probably won't be able to pay your rent, because you have to move on economically. Directors are probably about the worst paid people in the business, so you have to move on. I mean, as I said, I opened this show on Thursday, and on Monday morning I went into rehearsals at RADA for a graduation show, and I have to make choices like that in order to make the books balance in my life, which I'm sure everyone watching this will appreciate. If a job comes up and it's doable and you feel like you can make it work, then you take it. Anyway, yes, so I've kind of had to leave this behind in a way, because I've had to start another job. But at the same time, it opened on Tuesday. I put in script changes on Thursday, and I put in 2 big script changes on Saturday, which of course was after 2 days after press night. Completely changed. I completely reworked with Kefi, the writer, one of the scenes in the middle of the play. And I was in last night before the show, just giving them a little bit of re-rehearsal, just to kind of work them up and make sure that they're actually very much ready for an audience, which they are now. So in one sense, this has taken me a slightly longer time to finish, partly because of the quite short rehearsal period, and quite a long get-in, because the set was a huge job.
I can imagine.
And really, they've never really done anything quite as big as this here, and it really took us the best part of 2 days to build it and to finish it. They did a brilliant job.
So for someone who hasn't seen the show, could you tell us a little bit about it, a little bit about the story?
I think significantly it's about 2 brothers. They're both knocking around 40. And to a large degree, it's about their relationship. Their father died very recently, which is the point where we meet them, which I think is a very significant fact. But also, there's also been another fact which is revealed in the course of the play, which I won't tell you, which is becomes a definitive revelation in this relationship. It begins really quite funny and quirky and very entertaining and a lot of fun. But real characters are emerging, but there's quite a lot of there's some really good laughs. And then actually the play begins to turn into a domestic tragedy as certain things emerge, and things that were easy and funny become much more difficult, and it kind of lulls the audience into something really fun, which actually means that when you get to the hard stuff, they're not really expecting it, and it actually, I think, impacts on them emotionally in a way that it wouldn't if you said from the first beat of the play, this is going to be really sad,
more hard hitting.
Because you say at the beginning of the play, this is going to be fun. I think you really warm to the characters, and I think you really feel for them with what they go through. And I think also a lot of people, because it's a very simple story, a lot of people really associate with it, and it can put themselves in their shoes and empathise. And I think that when people leave the theatre, they really feel like they've gone on that journey with them, which is great. And
So how do you go about taking something from the page to the stage that's like that, especially when you've got these 2 varying emotions, that very fun side and then that very tragic side? What was your rehearsal process like? What was your approach for tackling the text?
I tend to spend a decent amount of time early in rehearsals really pushing the actors to understand their characters and to empathise with their characters. And sometimes some actors find it easier to think of their characters a bit more 2-dimensionally.
Yeah.
And I just don't do work like that. I will pop in things about the characters, about who they are and what's happening to them and what they need and what drives them, and so try and come out of the first week without it being really flagged up, with the actors kind of feeling like their character is important, and that they have a responsibility to that character. You therefore have a cast who feel a great responsibility for the play and for the narrative and for telling that story.
Again, it's like working from the inside out, like you were saying earlier.
Yeah, I guess so. And then I try to get the play up on its feet as quickly as possible. I don't allow actors to work with the script in their hand. I haven't done for a couple of years. So I use line feeding. So all the lines are fed by stage management or assistant director or whatever.
How early on is that you don't let them? Is that?
I don't let them have the books in their hands if they're standing up at any point. So, and I have to say, I've been doing, I think this show at RADA now is maybe the 5th show in a row I've done that on, and I found it very successful. And I'm very pleased with it as an approach, and I intend to stick with it. I want to free them up so that they don't have anything in their hands. They don't have to look for lines, so they can give their full attention to purely what they're saying in that moment, because obviously they just get one line at a time. So it's basically a be in the moment device. It forces the other actor to really listen to what's being said to them instead of going, I've got a line in a second, I better be checking what my line is, and not really listening. It also means the actors from day one are finding the physical relationships they have with each other, because their hands are free. Yeah. I mean, literally, probably the only thing I'd say is, where are you coming on? Where are you going to come on from? You know, and then after that, it just see what happens. And a key part of the director's job as well is to make sure that people know they have permission to create and to be creative and to do their work. So I try to give the actors as much space as possible, as much encouragement, and I suppose initially the first thing I try and do is maybe talk about the dynamics of the space, and we say that actually that line is not very strong, or that moment is compromised if you're too close together, or thing, just kind of helping to teach them how the space works. And then, for example, turning points. I think that's one of the biggest things early on. Is I'll try and clock where the scene shifts, and just kind of say that moment there is key. That's an event. Something has to happen there. We don't know what it is yet, but something has to happen.
And that's something that's so vital when you've got these varying emotions in a piece like this.
Yeah. One of the first things I do when thinking about a play is I think about how do I want the room to feel? How does the room need to feel in order to receive this play? So where do I need the audience to be just before the first scene starts in order for them to be prepared to watch the play in the manner in which this play needs to be watched? So in this one, for example, we couldn't move any of the seats, so we're doing it front on, but we've wrapped the whole thing around the audience in quite a surprising way that they generally really enjoy. So I always begin with that, to be honest. I think I'm not really a fourth wall director. Of the 30 odd productions I've worked on, very, very few of them have been in a proscenium arch theatre. I've only directed one show in a proscenium arch theatre.
So kind of looking to the future, you've been talking about your work with RADA. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'm directing a play called From Both Hips by Mark O'Rowe, and it's lovely, really lovely working on it. And Mark has been generous enough, the writer has been generous enough to be in touch with me, and we've been emailing each other, and we're going to speak on the phone later tonight, and hopefully a number of times through the rehearsal period. It's just fantastic to have access to that. I mean, it makes a huge difference. You get to test your ideas out with the person who knows best straight away. Yeah. And that really helps. And he's a generous man, so looking forward to keeping that relationship going through this rehearsal period. And a lovely bunch of actors as well. No. Yeah. It's my first time doing a graduation show, so it's
something new.
So it's something new for me. Yeah. I'm probably the youngest director they've worked with, so that's I think that's quite nice for them. Yeah. In a way. And then I'm directing a project which is a co-production between New Writing South, Natural Shocks, which is my company, and Hydrocracker, who just did the Pinter plays at the Shoreditch Town Hall with Barbican. And we're going to be doing a new writing project, Promenade at the Brighton Racecourse during the Brighton Festival.
Do you like working with new writing?
Well, I'm having a great time with it at the moment, I have to say. Yeah. Although, funnily enough, for me, I've come to new writing later, in the sense that I spent most of my 20s doing Shakespeare, and it's only towards it's only in my late 20s that I started focusing on new writing. And actually, I think I've learned a huge amount about plays from all that time working on Shakespeare. I think my understanding of good writing and dramaturgy and narrative hugely comes from working with such an excellent playwright. Although I think as well, if you're working on Shakespeare, I think you do have to work with Shakespeare the playwright as opposed to Shakespeare the legend or Shakespeare the name on the title. Peter Brook said you have to deal with Shakespeare with an equal amount of respect and disrespect, and I think that's really important. What
advice would you have for young directors getting into the game now who aspire to be like you?
I don't know. I think don't be afraid, if possible. If at all possible, don't be afraid of actors, particularly. particularly actors, because they're a bit like wild animals in that they smell fear. I know that sounds really stupid, but they need to feel like they are not the adult in the room. And they need to feel like that when they do things, it is being watched by an eye that they can trust. And they need to feel that when they do things, they will get feedback on that, which is honest and which is sensitive and accurate. And they need to feel like they're wanted. That's not to say that you have. Of course, you also have to challenge them. You have to push them, and you have to at times make them confront things maybe they don't want to confront about their character or their performance or how much work they need to put in. But in order to, you also have to earn the right to do that. You have to earn the right to make demands of them. But yeah, I think that if at all possible, try not to be afraid, because it doesn't help actors if you're not confident, I suppose.
Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you, it's been a pleasure.
And I look forward to seeing more of your work soon.